All right. I think that's a great way to start the podcast. I'm not even going to start over because that's what you are the first mom, the first woman on the Tricer podcast. I'm so excited to have Courtney Prete on today.
Well,
And
excited about that.
yeah, and I found you, Courtney, because when I first started Tricer, I was like, man, I really would like to work with some women in the hunting space. And so I don't know, I just Googled best women in the hunting space. And I found these lists and I started going through these lists. And most of the women in the hunting space looked like they were worked at Hooters. And they would kill an animal and then all of a sudden they'd have a full thing of makeup on and it's like their top was like, it's just what the heck? This does not seem like the person I want to work with. And then I found Courtney Prete. And Courtney is like going on bear hunts, going after moose. She's fishing. Like she is in the outdoor space. And not only that, she's also growing that space for women and holding archery shoots for women and really creating like a real culture of hunting within women in the industry. And I really appreciated that and I respected that. And I said, Courtney, I want to work with you. And so and we've worked together on a few little projects here and there. And I just support what you're doing. And I am just so happy to have you on here.
I'm excited. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's been a long time coming. I feel like that we get together and get to do a podcast. And I just have to thank you, but also say it's so hard because we want to build these platforms and be able to support hunters, no matter if you look like how I hunt or do it differently than me. But I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to finding some of those really strong, positive female hunters. It can be hard. I feel like a lot of us do get buried down a little bit lower on the totem pole because, we're doing it with class intact.
Yeah, for sure. And you're doing like real adventures though, correct? You're not just going to Texas and hunting over a feeder. Like you are like living it. Yeah.
We're living it. Yeah, we definitely do. I've found myself over the last few years on some pretty gnarly hunts that I hate to be the person that's it was the hardest or the worst or the longest, but we definitely put ourselves through some pretty wild experiences. And I've grown so much I feel like individually, as a mom, as a woman, as a hunter, by stepping into those more uncomfortable kind of experiences, like an all girls trip to Kodiak, right? Like an unguided all girls trip. That's not something that a lot of women do. And it's not even necessarily the thing that I would have initially just said, yeah, I'm going to go say yes to this experience. Scared the hell out of me a little bit, right? But like, you don't get stronger, you don't get better at doing the hard things unless you show up to do those hard things.
And not only that, and you're the leader of this stuff. So all these women are expecting you to be comfortable in that, right? And go, hey, we're going to Kodiak.
To some degree, I was actually a follower on quite a few of these adventures. We certainly do, though, through our company, Her Outdoor Journey, offer some of these experiences that you're talking about. But I will say I tend to not be the one that operates outside of my wheelhouse. So if I don't know it, I'm not going to teach it. And I'm never going to bring women just totally blinded into a situation that I've never walked through myself. I think that's something that's been really important for me with building these events.
Yeah, and that with you, like you're really good at not want to say holding people's hands, but bringing them in entry level, right? You're bringing them in and you're doing these shoots with them and you're just helping them to like, explore hunting. A lot of people have interest in it, especially I feel, do you homestead a little bit too? You do, right? A little bit?
Did you say homeschool or homestead?
Homestead.
I don't really. I would love to get more into it, but that's a very green area for me.
Okay, but since COVID, like I feel like a lot of people want to get involved and want to learn about it, so they have no idea where to start, especially women in the space. And I feel like you've really offered a tool to do that. What are some of the events you guys do?
Yeah, specifically to that, I think self-reliance is so important and something that we've all seen become a little bit more real life scenario. Like I need to be able to have options to put food on the table for my family when I can't find it at the supermarket. I need to be able to figure out how to purify water or live when the power goes out. So I think that those things are just, we're seeing a little bit more evidence that is really important skills to have. And I certainly want to be able to empower my community, the women who follow online that come to these events. So we always try to really instill a baseline of building confidence and those self-reliance skills. This year, we're doing some pretty fun things. I started doing the events 2017, 2018, and it started out as just archery fundamentals course, which was super fantastic. We would do it over a long weekend. Everybody get together, camp out. There was no stupid questions. You could come in and you could know a little or a lot about your bow. You could be well versed with it or not shoot it very often. And there was a place for everybody to feel included and comfortable. And over the last few years, we started doing a few more adventures. So like kind of destination style retreats. So last year we did Alaska. And it was a 7-day just fishing frenzy. We had so much fun. I hate to say it, a little bit bougie, but it was like a nice place. You're coming back with really comfortable, luxurious lodging, but you're going out and you're getting after it during the day. So it was a kind of a fun medium. And this year we actually expanded to offering guided hunts as well. And really for me, I love exposing new women and families to the outdoors, but there's this piece with retention that becomes so important because we want to bring newcomers into the hunting realm. But if we're not helping them be more successful, or if we're not helping them apply the skills that they learn in a camp or a course in the field, keeping them interested in the hunting long term is a little bit more difficult. So this year, new for 2024, we're doing guided hunts as well. We've got one going in Australia and then one in Hawaii, and some more adventure camps this year that are just going to be really fun for getting people connected with like-minded individuals and out just doing some of those like bucket list kind of events.
That's awesome. I actually just had a phone call on the way home for this meeting about going to Hawaii, hunting axis deer. So I was talking to Nate from Kestrel. I'm hopefully going to go with Nate from Olin and go hunt axis deer in Hawaii. It's on my bucket list. That's really cool. You talked about retention, and that's one thing I've dealt with hunters, and I don't know if it's more so with women or not, that you could probably speak to that. Everyone, like I have a lot of friends who want to kill an animal. Take me hunting. And I'm always like, get a hunting license, start scouting. And then then you lose them. Like they don't want to do it. They want to have their, like their idea of take me hunting is take me to your spot, put me in a spot, and the deer comes in, I'll shoot you the deer you've been scouting all year, and yay for me, and I'll go home and not do it again. Or they'll never go engage past that. And you know that with hunting, right? There's like different levels of it. How do you feel like the retention is with women once they start doing your classes? Are they actually getting out and scouting on their own, or do you like going and doing it outside of that? Does that help you? Does that help for that?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. It helps so much. And every woman that comes, we've partnered with Onyx Maps for years. And so they all get Onyx, they all get a crash course on how to use it. And again, these things go to like self-reliance, but also like safety, right? Like we want women not only to just be going out and getting after it and like going to hunt and going to do these things outside. We want them to do it safely and empowered. And so I think you teach them the ability to like look at your maps and navigate and find your routes and use your pins, and all of those things I think really help so much, because at the end of the day, again, we don't want to just push people out the door. We want them to go out comfortable. I have men often reach out to me and they'll say, I love that you're a hunter. I don't see many females. This is great. I want to get my wife or my girlfriend out. I want to get her involved. What is your advice? And number one advice every single time is make it a comfortable experience for her. If you go out and it's late season and it's winter and it's cold or it's rainy or you're not prepared for the things you're going to get yourself into, there's a really good chance that there will be a distaste for that experience and that exposure. And so whoever it is, whether it's your kids or your coworker or your partner, like just keep that thing comfortable, make sure it's a good experience. But yeah, I think just giving them these tools, I can't tell you how many times in the last few years we've wrapped up our events for the year and now we're in hunting season and I get this text message. Courtney, you'll never believe what just happened. And the next one is a picture of her holding her bull, or things like, I had a few women come to camp, an archery camp a couple of years ago, and they all came from the same town but didn't know each other. And so at that camp, they got connected. And now those women are out like backpacking together. They're taking their families fishing together. Like they're getting to grow and feel supported in that outdoor space. And so I can't say enough good things about the camps. Really easy for me to do because they're my events, but just honestly getting to watch the byproduct of these camps and the community and connection that these women form is like, that is honestly the biggest reward for me out of the whole thing.
That is awesome. And I like the way that you keep talking about like support and doing that. Cause like I was talking with Lampers today and Brad Hunt. I'm going to go to their Western Hunting Summit, and they were both making fun of my trigger punch. Like they're not supportive of me. They're making fun of me. And I feel like with men, like we could be that way, especially like I don't have the patience. Like I took my wife, my wife doesn't hunt. She's just not her thing. We have 5 kids. She's raised 4 boys who are all going to hunt. My daughter doesn't want to hunt, but, I sometimes we as men aren't the most patient with our wives or with women when it comes to that stuff, and we're dragging them along. And I've learned that I'll piggyback off it with not so much with women, but with my kids. Like with my boys, my older boys, I rushed them into shotguns. I rushed them into centerfire rifles, and they both became so trigger shy. Like we're still dealing with it at 17 years old and be like, oh, don't be a wuss, just do it. Instead of walking them into it and being patient, I was doing that. And then I've had some experiences where it is good for them to be uncomfortable sometimes, but like where I've drug them further than I should have. Mm-hmm. Where I've learned now as I've gotten older and had 5 kids, like my 10-year-old, he just drew a turkey tag. Yesterday was the first time he ever shot fire rifle, but he shot in a 22 a million times, and he shot in his BB gun a million times, right? So we went out and shot shotguns and centerfire rifles yesterday, 300 blackouts, and he shot perfectly. It was unbelievable. No trigger, no flinch, no nothing, and it was great because I didn't rush him into it, and I wasn't like, don't be a wuss, pick up that gun. I don't think women receive that well, right? And when you said, oh, it's bougie, I like bougie too. Like sometimes it's okay to be a little bougie on these hunts and do stuff. We don't have, there's this weird, especially with social media and some of these guys out there, they're just going so deep. This weird idea that you have to be on this miserable hunt to enjoy yourself. And man, I just went to Mexico with my father-in-law who's 75. And we hunted in a ground blind together. And we had the best time in the world just hanging out. Like you don't always have to have this miserable thing. So taking your wife or your daughter or even your kids on a dove hunt or a rabbit hunt to start instead of a raining late season deer hunt might be a better avenue to get them into it.
1,000%. Yeah, I could not agree more with that. And you're right too, when you talk about that on social media, there's always this portrayal that it was the hardest, longest, worst. And you're right. It doesn't always have to be that way. And I don't know if it's like that you get a little extra credit if it's real hard or you almost died or whatever, but
no pack is less than 100 pounds.
Exactly. But yeah, it doesn't have to always be that way. I learned that for myself actually year before last on that first Kodiak trip that we did. And I'm like, Kodiak, okay, give me the details. And it's, yeah, well, we're going to come back and we'll have a cabin, which will be warm at night. And I'm like, I'm in. Like, yes, let's go. This sounds great. Warm at night. That sounds amazing. So it is fun when you get to do some of those real cool experiences, but you get to do it a little bit more comfortably for sure.
Yeah, definitely. You keep referring to yourself as a hunter, not a huntress. Why is that?
Oh gosh, did we really just go there?
Am I triggering you?
It's so funny because I don't really have an opinion on the whole thing. I feel like there's definitely a negative connotation to huntress, and only because what you typically see tied to that. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that, because I could put a very general statement out that won't be true in all cases. So I support people if they want to use the term huntress and that works for them. That's great. It's not something where I feel like I need to be gender specific when I'm talking about myself as a hunter.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to trigger you on that. I'm sorry. I think it's neat that you are out there doing it. And I consider you an equal in the industry and how you do it and like how you're talking about it. Like, it's not like you're not trying to separate the two. You're a hunter and like, we're all doing the same thing. That's where I was going with that is like, I feel like when I see Courtney doing stuff, it's not like Courtney's a woman hunter. Courtney is a hunter. And I really appreciate that about you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And honestly, it's not triggering for me. I think the hardest thing right now is there's so much like animosity within our own community, within our own hunting community. Mm-hmm. And some of the shoe fits and they should wear it, but at the same rate, like I'm not here to judge anybody else's part. As long as we're hunting ethically and trying to do our best to support this love of ours and have sustainable conservation to where we can continue to do this, you can do it with makeup or no makeup. You can identify however you want, whatever floats your boat. For me, it just isn't important. And I try to think about that distinction too. For example, Jana Waller just came on our podcast the other day, and I wanted to talk about her because I think she's such a powerful woman. That's the truth. I think she's such a powerful, influential female hunter. But I try to remove myself from classifying her in that way because I think she's wonderful, whether she's a female or not a female. I think she's doing cool things in the outdoor space. And so definitely something that I try to be pretty mindful of, especially with owning a women owned and based business.
Yeah, I think you're crushing it. That's why, and especially in the hunting space. So, what about you are also a mom and a wife, and you are out there raising up 2 boys or 3 boys?
2 boys.
2 boys. And I want to touch on that from your perspective of men and the state of men in our country, the state of men. Are men lacking in is manliness a bad thing? Is masculinity a bad thing from your perspective?
It is not a bad thing. I was raised, I don't even know what you want to call it, to be honest, like old school traditional, right? There definitely was this leadership that came from my dad and the family. I was also and am raised, and I'm Christian. And so I feel like there's definitely a little bit more of an emphasis for the men to lead. And that's just something that I believe in. And I don't see that necessarily in our society anymore. And I have a funny story about this. I think men and women are getting a little bit deviated in the way that we uphold our normal traditions and our gender roles, if that makes any sense. We were out to dinner. I just went on a women's retreat, a wildlife photography retreat, had your tripods there. They were amazing. Can't say enough good things about them. It was so fun. And on this trip, we had a guy come and join us, and he's a young man. He served for a time as a Marine. He's a videographer, super cool guy. He's 25, a younger kid. I consider younger kid. And we're out to dinner, and everybody had ordered dinner, and I had ordered, I'm on this stupid restrictive diet right now, a gluten-free, dairy-free burger. And they come to drop everything off at the table, and they put it down in front of me, and my girlfriend's sitting right next to me, and she goes, "Oh, is that the gluten-free one?" And he goes, "No, it's not gluten-free. She didn't order gluten-free." And I looked around at the table and I'm like, "I swear I did." And everybody's like, "Yeah, no, you clearly did." And the guy goes, "You didn't order a gluten-free burger. If you did, I would have told you it's not gluten-free." And got really upset with me to the point where, and I don't like confrontation, but I'm not super reserved. I tend to handle a situation like that. And I just didn't even know what to say. He's raised his voice and was telling me I didn't order this burger. And I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And so after the dinner, and unsuspecting, this kid, Jerry, he's 25, he actually went and he talked to the manager afterwards. And he was like, "This is not how you talk to women. That was so uncalled for and so not right. And a man should never raise his voice. And any such, this situation did not call for that. You need to talk to your server about this situation." And I just was so taken by his willingness to stand up and be a leader and handle that situation. Not that we couldn't, but it was just nice to see that. And it's funny that you bring that up because I reached out to him the day after and I was like, "Hey, I just want to say thank you for standing up for us." And it's not something that I see very often anymore. It's not something that I've had as an example for me, outside of my dad growing up, always had my back. But yes, you don't see that kind of strong masculinity anymore. And I don't know if it's because you have a whole bunch of women and a whole bunch of people trying to tear that masculinity down by saying that it's used disproportionately. But I do agree that it's got to change. I feel like it really needs to change because you don't see men opening the door for women anymore, which I think they should do. You don't see this kind of generosity. And I think, though, that it really does go both male and female. We all need to do a better job, be more kind, be more considerate of other people. It's not that hard to do, but it is for some, apparently.
I'm a Christian as well. And what we would teach, at our church, is that we are equal yet different. So in my marriage, my wife and I are equal, but we have different traits.
Yes.
They're off the hunting topic right now, but my wife is here's an example. I have 4 boys. My 4-year-old Dylan, we adopted him. He is he gets on a dirt bike, he rides a skateboard. So we were at the desert and Dylan followed a giant 450 quad on his 50 quad. and jumped it off of a 5-foot cliff, literally a cliff. Imagine a retaining wall. And he went end over end and the quad went on top of him. And I was in front of my dirt bike and I wasn't there. So my wife gets out of this Jeep and she is flipping out and she is crying. So now Dylan's crying because Lauren's crying, right? Which is good because she's a mom, she's nurturing. She picks him up, puts him in the car, and they're in the car and they're leaving. And they get to me finally, and what's wrong? He crashed his quad. Oh my gosh. And now Dylan's crying. Dylan doesn't even know why he's crying. He's crying because mom's crying. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Hop out, Dylan. So we get Dylan out. I'm like, Dylan, okay, squeeze my hand. Okay, move your legs. Okay, bring him back to the bike. No. Bring him back to the bike. He's going to get back on the horse and ride it. So we bring him back and put it on, right? But that's like an extreme example, but in our marriage, we need both sides of that. Like we need her to have that nurturing side and we need me to have that tough side, right? And we need to, and a lot of the problems with today's society is that the man isn't having that tough side. So the mom's having to do both roles, and that's not what she was created to do. Or the man's having to do both roles, right? There's this, and you're seeing it right now, and people are revolting against it. I don't want to go too much into like gender politics or anything, but it doesn't naturally, if it doesn't naturally come, like people are, that's not right. And they're still having to go along with it but it naturally doesn't feel right. So we're doing something that doesn't even feel right to us because we weren't created to be that way. And we're forcing women to do things they weren't meant to do or aren't created to do and taking them out of the role they're supposed to do, right? And by no means am I saying that women should just be in the kitchen. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like my wife is a freaking powerful woman. My wife, I could not do anything without my wife. She's going to Kenya next month with my 15-year-old. She's going to go preach and do stuff. I mean, my wife is a rock star. If my wife died, my children would look like homeless people. Is my worst nightmare. I die, she's going to have 10 guys at the funeral ask her to marry her. So she's a stud. But there's definitely, and she sees that, and we work really well together in that. We have a great marriage. We've been married for 17, almost 18 years this year. We've been together since 2003. So our 20-year reunion is coming up this year. So we'll be 21 years together, 20 years from high school. Where am I going with that? But we work together well, right? And I'm not trying to step on her role. She's not trying to step on mine. And it's important to have that. So with that, how do you address that, like with your boys? I see you getting in the field. I see you bringing about hunting, fishing. Talk about that. Talk about bringing up boys. You read that book?
Raising boys is pretty stinking awesome. I joke often that I wouldn't have done well with a girl, mainly because I had a lot of karma coming my way. But I think I'm recouping some of that karma with teenage boys.
Teenage boys are the worst.
They're hard.
There's so much. They cry way more than my daughter, but keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're just difficult. I don't have criers necessarily, but I have defiance occasionally. But no, my kids they're incredible. It's definitely been a journey. I was a single mom for over a decade. And you talk about wearing both of those hats and having to fill both of those roles. I will never pretend like my kids didn't have their dad, because they definitely had their dad, but I had to fill a lot of shoes. And I don't think I necessarily did it right. I just did it the best way that I knew how. And it looked a lot like, actually, I remember shortly after we got divorced, I just wanted to continue to do the things that I loved to do with the kids and not feel like I couldn't, because I was a quote unquote single mom. And so I started by just taking them camping. We would use the traditional campgrounds to where I knew that there was a bathroom and I knew that there was a camp host if I needed them. I felt a little bit safer as opposed to just doing some like dispersed camping. And I bought a tent that was just one of those really easy to pop up ones. So I didn't have to feel like I had to struggle because I didn't have another adult there to hold the other side. And you just figured those things out. But it has been quite the journey. We've got to do a lot of really fun things. I guess it's one of those blessing in disguises, but I had been living a pretty fast-paced life. I don't tend to let myself slow down enough to absorb sometimes. I'm like repacking for the next thing, whether that's a work thing or just a fun thing. And so about 10 years ago, my grandma got sick with pancreatic cancer, and she really helped me see the need to slow down. And she said to me, the last words she really spoke to me was, Courtney, promise me that you won't get to the end of your life wishing you would have done the things that you really wanted to do. And I applied that at the time to not only my own life, like my own desires and the things that I wanted to do, but I wanted to help try to fulfill my kids' memory banks. Like I wanted to help them fill those up and do those things. And so we started doing a yearly road trip. We'd take 2 or 3 weeks and we'd drive around. We'd hit all the different states and we'd start knocking these things off of their own bucket lists, which has been super fun. But we try to just keep it really adventurous and entertaining. I joke sometimes that being a mom to teenage boys is it's like constantly finding a new hobby to do, because the older they get, the harder it really is to spend that quality time and engage with them with things that fill their cup. And
Hmm.
a few years ago, despite my being a really crappy bike rider, I got a mountain bike and we started mountain biking because that's what they wanted to do. And I think it's just trying to constantly figure out where their passions are and what things excite them and do those. When it comes to the hunting, hunting is obviously one of my favorite pastimes, whether that's shed hunting or mushroom hunting or big game hunting, but it's not necessarily their passion. And that's something for me that I've had to just try to let it work out how it's going to.
Hmm.
We try to invite and create those opportunities, but shoot, my kids like youth big game hunting and like the draws and like all of the different opportunities that these youth have. Like
Hmm.
I could
Especially in
just get
Oregon.
my kids to realize these incredible opportunities and take, because they're like, no, I've got sports or no, which is great too. And I don't want to take away from their academic or sports or anything, but it is hard sometimes. I feel like, man, if they only knew what incredible opportunities these were. For example, last year we were going to do a backcountry moose hunt in Alaska, and my dad was going to be the primary hunter, but our youngest son had the opportunity to take the second tag. And he's, yeah, no, I just don't want to go do the field day. And so he didn't do it. And there's part of me that kind of kicks myself because, yeah, they're teenage boys. They can make some of their decisions and choose if they want to do this hunt or not. But should I have pushed him to finish the field day so that he could go and have this other tag and do this
Hmm.
thing? I think for me, I'm the kind of person, I'm the kind of teacher and leader in my family where I'm going to help you have the opportunity, but you also got to get skin in the game.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing, right? Kids are awesome. I always hunt, but I don't know that like my oldest boy's gonna be 18 this year. He's had a license for 2 years now. He never went out on his own last year. And I'm like, take a shotgun, go hunting. He never really, and I was talking to my 15-year-old too. Like, I'm like, man, son, like, I feel like I'm spoon feeding you guys these hunts. Like, we were talking this weekend. Like, at what point are you going to get on X and start looking for yourself? At what point are you going to start looking at what tags you want to go on where I'm not finding them for you? And so I think it's important as a parent to realize like your passions aren't going to be theirs. Like your abilities aren't going to, they aren't going to be the same ability. They're going to be such, they're so like, I have 5 kids and they are all so different. And so like, I don't want to force them or ruin them. Like they might not, like my oldest boy might not hunt when he turns 18. Like he might just go about life. He's going to go to college. I'm sure he's going to move away because he hates California. And who knows, he might not hunt. So yeah, there is, I guess it's important to, what do they say? Meet them where they are.
Mhm.
Meet them where they are. So like my 15-year-old loves dirt bikes and so do I. So that's just been like an awesome hobby for us to go do that together. Or my daughter, she loves going to Sephora and going to get makeup. Let's go to Sephora, honey. What do you want to do? You want to sit down and she loves eating chocolate and baking. So we'll bake stuff together. I'm not going to force her. If I forced her yesterday, we went out. I'm like, hey, babe, do you want to go? We're going to go shoot shotguns. Do you want to go? And she's like, nope. I'm like, you sure? Said, nope. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm not going to force her to go do it. That's not where she is. She doesn't want to be there. But that can be like, as a parent, you just, I think, especially as a dad, like you just assume like they're just going to love what you love and that's it. And then you realize that they're just their own human beings, right? And we're seeing that with my oldest boy, especially with my wife right now. There's this butting head thing going on between my wife and my oldest son because like he's becoming a man in our house. And I'm like, you didn't marry him. So we have this grown man now who's like basically a full grown man and they're butting heads on a lot of stuff. And he's separating from her. And that's making a weird struggle for us too in the house. Weird dynamic is as they become adults, becoming their own person and going out and doing stuff and like allowing them to fail and not getting in there and like, oh, no, 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 don't do that. No, let him mess up. Let him screw his truck up, even though it's going to cost a bunch of money. Let him do stuff. It's just, I don't know, it's part of parenting.
But again, that kind of goes the difference between a father nurturing his child and a mother nurturing her child. Because, I feel like both are super valuable. Like both of
Mhm.
those either toughen up, or both of those kind of, I want to help you not bump your head so much. Like those are both really important things to have. But you're right. Like at the end of the day, you do have to let them figure it out. This is the point to maturity, right? This is the point to growing up, is that you are capable of going out on your own and starting your own household and someday family and all those things. But if I'm being totally honest, I'm in the middle of a midlife crisis right now with my 18-year-old getting ready to like graduate and be out of the house. I'm losing my mind right now.
Mhm.
So I have zero advice to give in this realm, but I can definitely relate with your wife, Lauren, and how that's going. It's a rocky road, but I think at the end of the day, you just try to instill as much morals and let them know right from wrong and give them a spiritual foundation and love them through it. They're going to figure it out and it'll all work out in the end.
So I I don't know why I didn't put two and two together with this. Is like your channel is called Her Outdoor Journey, and so is your podcast and your company.
Our event company is called Her Outdoor Journey.
Okay,
The podcast is called the Soul Summit Podcast.
Soul Summit. That's right, Soul Summit. So where I was going with that is you talked about okay, you got divorced, and then you decided like you want to do things with your kids, so you went and bought a tent. And I don't know why I just clicked right then. I'm like, oh, that's like when this journey started. Is that kind of like where that journey started? Because it sounds like you weren't going to Alaska 10 years ago.
Nope, I was not going to Alaska 10 years ago. I grew up hunting and
Okay.
outdoors and fishing and all that stuff, but it really became important to me to create space and find opportunities and learn, because it's when I switched to bow hunting. So I grew up as a rifle hunter, and when my grandma got sick, my dad stopped hunting. He was my hunting partner. And so when I didn't have him anymore, I was like, I'm going to do something new. And then that new thing looked like putting a bow in my hand. And then when I wanted to ask questions, I didn't know where to go and who to go to. And
Mhm.
and so the events were really stemmed out of that, me looking around and be like, I don't see any other women here doing what I'm doing, and just feeling like the odd duck, which
Mhm.
I felt like in different scenarios my whole life, like the odd duck. But I was like, man, women need another female they can ask these questions. We need to know how certain things fit our body differently, and how we're going to have different scenarios in the field that our husbands or boyfriends or partners can't show us. They don't know these things, and so that's really where that stemmed from.
And so that journey started, and how did that evolve for you, like hunting wise? Were you going out in the field on your own? Were you starting to do guided hunts? Like how did you start to figure it out hunting wise?
Yeah. So again, grew up hunting with him forever, and I knew rifle hunting and I knew mule deer in Eastern Oregon. That's all I grew up hunting. And I lived on my entire life. And when he had to switch his gears and do something different, I just started figuring it out on my own. And the first few times, I always laugh, and I think about this so often, and it comes up pretty frequently in conversations, like that confidence building piece. Like, how did you get to where you'll walk umpteen miles into
Mhm.
God's country by yourself? It didn't start there, I'll tell you that. It started with going for drives and getting, familiar with the roads or units I was in. It looked like going 400 yards and doing a call setup instead of a mile and 2 miles in. So again, I think it goes back to my philosophy in life is you just show up to the things that excite you, but also scare you. And then you continue to just put your energy and effort and your skill and your knowledge into those things. And before you know it, you're capable, you're confident, you're successful. And that evolution, again, it wasn't like a linear path for me. Some days it's a little easier to go out into the backcountry by yourself. And some days you've got a little fear that sneaks in. But I've always said, anytime somebody says, how do you get past the fear? Like, you don't get past it. You just stop thinking about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's important to just start. If you like you have to just start even though you're afraid, just start somewhere small. Like I like what you said, like sometimes it's 200 yards off the road, but you're gonna figure it out. No one gets there. Like I'm very like I don't consider myself a great hunter. Like I'm still learning. I'll be learning till the day I die, right? And I think it's important to recognize that, but recognize that like I'm gonna continue to start and learn and go do things. Like I'm gonna do a high country mule deer hunt this year in September. It's going to be like above 12,000 feet. Like I've only been up that high like once or twice in my life. Like I'm from San Diego. I live at the beach, man. We are sea level. That's what we are. But I'm going to go do that. I'm going to figure it out. And I've gotten to that point by going to places like Idaho or Eastern Oregon. I hunted over there, and I've been hunting now for 10 years, and it's slowly getting better and better, but I had to start somewhere and make a lot of mistakes.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to be willing to make those mistakes. You're out there on your own, you're doing this stuff, you're bow hunting, which you have to pick up like the hardest sport of hunting. Tell me about the first success. What's your first success with a bow?
Oh, first success with a bow. I'm going to tell the story. It's a success and it's not. And the reason I chose this one is because of how impactful it was for me in learning and the curve between a rifle hunt and an archery hunt. This was, I think, the year after I put a bow in my hand. It was a little bit later in the year when I started archery. And so it was the next year that I hunted. It was on a blacktail hunt on the west side of Oregon. We had a stand, we had cameras up, seeing lots of deer. And I had a buck come into the stand and I pulled back, took the shot, looked like a great hit, was super excited, adrenaline hit. I'm like, whoa, like this was crazy. Like, awesome. And so I proceeded to get out of my stand and go find the buck that I just shot. No time passed, no nothing. Just,
I know
okay,
where this is going.
I'm going to go. And I ended up finding my arrow, finding lots of good blood, pushed the deer. I could hear him at one point. I'm just like, at rifle hunting, it's like you shoot, it goes down. When I was at the edge of this ridge line, and so he went down. And I tracked him right down to the stream. And then I was like, okay, it dawns on me. I need to pull back and just give him a little time. And it started downpouring. If Western Oregon, it can get with it. And I never found that buck, but I learned so much in that experience. And that was honestly one of the moments where I was like, I have a lot to learn. It doesn't just translate from rifle hunting to archery hunting. Like, you have to apply yourself and do things a little bit differently when you're archery hunting. And so it was a good lesson for me. Okay, I've got to slow down. I've got to invest in this. I need to know the ins and outs. I've got to ask the questions and find a good mentor. But yeah, it was definitely a pivotal moment for me that I still would say, obviously, it's the worst of a worst. As a hunter, you end up losing an animal. I'm sure it was a fatal hit. There was lots of lung blood, but you didn't get to bring that full circle. You didn't get to notch your tag on that and bring it home and put it in your freezer and show your family. But I still find so much value in that. And I think that's one thing really important about hunting in general is not leveling yourself up to where you are only successful or a failure based on a tag notched or not.
Yeah, speak to like the mental side of that, like the failure side of that, and the mental side of what you just experienced. Because like I have, like one of my biggest struggles on hunts is the mental side, the mental aspect. I think we spent 14 days hunting this year in a row, and there was times where I was just like missing my kids. But there's been times in my life where I have hit an animal, rushed the shot, lost the animal. And there's one time in particular where I went home because I was just done. I was like, I'm going home. I can't, you've been doing this for 3 or 4 days. You're tired and you just blew it and hurt an animal. How important is the mental aspect of hunting?
Oh my gosh. The mental part of a hunt is everything. And I don't think that, in my opinion or in my experience, you never completely own the mental fortitude. It's always like that exercised skill in the moment, because I still find times every single season on every single different hunt where I have to dig in. Shoot, I cried on my elk hunt this last year on an archery hunt because I was so homesick for my kids. I'm like out here and I'm like, the wind keeps swirling and we're in elk and then we get screwed out of them because of the wind and all these things. And all I can think about is I'm sacrificing my time, people I love the most, to be here failing and having this wind screw me up. And I sat there and had a little moment and just was like, I just want to go home to my kids. And I ended up saying a prayer. I was just like, Lord, if you present me this opportunity, like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to go home. And it was that afternoon that it all came together and I killed my bull. But to my point, like, every single hunt taps me in some mental way. And I think it's a good thing. And I think I actually crave that because we're built to refine ourselves through those challenges. And I really feel like they make me a grittier human, which we don't all want to have to be gritty, but I think this life really requires us to show up and have that mental fortitude.
Yeah, 100%. I spent, like I said, 14 days hunting with my 15-year-old, and we killed a Coues deer, and then we moved to another unit to hunt elk, and he missed opening day.
Mm.
And we had rain and wet and misery for 7 days, and we had to go through some stuff. And I was like, we're not going home. Like, this is, and I tell him now, like, I'm glad you didn't kill an elk. Because that grit that kid has from that hunt, like we actually use the word grit a lot from that hunt. Like it showed me a lot about that young man, like the man he's going to become from having to endure that stuff and go through it and get, hey, 4 a.m., like you're going out. Like it's not I was joking around with somebody the other day. It's not like a Jetboil commercial where you wake up and you're making your coffee and you're making your food. No, when you're hunting, like you're getting up at 4 a.m. and you're sore and tired. You're rolling out of bed and you're hiking through bushes, not on a nice trail, to get out to where you're going to sit and sit there for 30 or 40 minutes in the freezing rain or snow to wait for the light to come up so you can look for elk and then blow a stock.
Mm-hmm.
But those experiences, I think, prepare you for life. I had this conversation with Cody Rich, and we talk about business, but I feel like hunting really does carry over into life. And I think it's so important to have your boys out there doing it or doing it because you really just learn to endure. And you learn more about I've learned more about my physical body hunting than I ever have anything else. There's one elk pack out that I can think of where it was it was a fly-in hunt. My buddy shot a bull 8 miles from the airstrip, and we shot the bull like 8 a.m. and got back to camp at 1 a.m. And I remember thinking I'm never going to make it. And like, I made it. And like, from that point on, something switched from like, my body's capable of so much more than I ever thought it was. And I'm soft. Like I can get through this stuff and I can endure it. And I think that helps with all aspects of my life.
Totally. It's life requires discipline. I don't care who you are. If you want to do life and you want to have some sort of success, it requires discipline. It requires you showing up on the days you don't want to. And I have this like mentality in this house. It's you don't want to, no one cares. Like you just still have to do the thing. And I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. The hard hunting in general, but the hard hunting experiences, the ones where you're like, did I really screw up by saying yes to this? Or should we have gone this far? Or I think those are the ones though that really, I come home with like wings shot out of my back. Like I can do all things. Certainly there's a foundation for that confidence. And I think a lot of that is attributed to my like spiritual intellection. Is just, I trust that I can get through this thing. I trust that whether I'm in the field or I'm at home, like one foot in front of the other is going to get me to the end point.
Yeah. Type 2 fun is fun afterwards, not during. That's for sure. We started doing this thing now. Do you ever listen to Jocko Willink at all?
Mm-hmm.
So Jocko does this thing which is thank you in his Jocko voice. And so like when you're doing something sucky, just say thank you. And so we started doing that because we hunted a lot this year. We killed 5 elk in 3 days in Utah. We had to pack all of them out. My 15-year-old, I kept saying, say thank you. So there was times I heard him on this elk hunt in December, which was just a suck fest for a week, saying thank you. Like we had one night, it was like a 3.5 hour pack out of this canyon back to our truck. Like it was just, I heard him saying thank you. I think we were just exhausted. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that mental fortitude is something that is just lacking. I think it's important to do and have it because if you could do that, there's certain times you go on a hunt and you're like, man, if I could do that, I can do anything.
1,000%. Yes. I still frequently reference the first sheep hunt I did, and I won't get into all the details of how hard and how heavy and all the things, but I thought I was going to die. It was, and to make it worse, I have a bad back and my back was spasming the entire time in. We're 26 miles into the backcountry on the sheep hunt. And I think about that moment frequently. We like one of the night before we ended up going out and killing that ram, we legitimately slept in a cave with nothing. We slept in our packs. Like it was pretty gross. The whole thing was not fun, but I constantly think back to that. And when I'm like in my normal day-to-day life or like work isn't going the way I want, or things just aren't aligning, or I feel like I'm in the storm, I'm like, you can do so much harder than you give yourself credit for. Remember this time. Remember this experience. And I think that can carry you a long ways. And it does for my kids as well. Like our youngest son, we've taken in the backcountry on fly-in hunts in the bush of Alaska several times. And I can see his confidence growing because he's doing those hard things.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So we touched on the mental side of it. I don't want to jump around too much, but what about the physical side of it? Because I know you're a pretty healthy person. Like you're eating healthy and you're exercising. And are you doing any kind of like personal training as well? I don't know if
I'm not anymore. No,
you're
I
not.
did for
You
20
were.
years, but
So talk to that. Speak about that. What did that look like for you?
yeah, the physical thing is something you definitely got to stay on top of. I would have considered myself an athlete for much of my life. And I took a turn, and this is probably not going to be the answer you were looking for, but it's my story. During a bunch of endurance training, and when I was like at my peak, I started just feeling not myself anymore. And I've had some health issues I've been, trying to figure out and facing for quite a while. But it's crazy when you go from being able to perform in a certain way and
Mhm.
having a certain level of fitness to, I'm 39 now, but I feel like 39 feels different than I thought it was going to feel. And something I've been thinking about a lot lately as I'm trying to really work in being proactive to regain my health and regain the endurance and strength that I had is you just end up taking it for granted a lot. And
Mhm.
I actually felt like I was somebody who frequently like really dug in and like really felt thankful, like for having legs at work, for having legs that will take me up a mountain, for having lungs, for just having the ability that I know not everybody has. I try to be really grateful of that. But what I'm finding that I took for granted was how quickly things can change once you start backing off from your routine or your discipline. And so that's something I just can't say enough about. I feel whether you're from the Midwest or maybe back east, and like we hunt a little different out west. It takes a little bit more out here on some of these big game hunts than it does in some other places. And so everybody's fitness level for what they want to do and how they want to hunt is going to be different. But I will just say, don't take it for granted because things like mobility or range of motion or
Mhm.
strength or balance, right? Like those things change so quickly for us. And so I think staying ahead of it is really important. It's if you can get out of the mindset of, I'll get in shape right before season happens, or I'll start rucking 4 or 6 weeks before the kick of off of September. If you can actually implement a little bit more of that, I think that there's a lot to be said for the longevity of the physical ability.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in the gym like 4 or 5 days a week and a lot of mobility stuff like you're talking about. And I'm 38 years old, so you are my senior by a year. But things have it's just not clicking like it did. It's really strange, right? Like this last season, I was just like, man, like I have my right shoulder rebuilt. Now my left shoulder, I think, is what's hurting me. And like I put my pack on, and I'm like, trying to get my pack on. And then my left knee always hurts. Like it does, you do take it for granted. I think I took my 20s for granted. I think I definitely drove my bike like I stole it, riding dirt bikes and
Oh,
hunting and doing stuff. Like I definitely wasn't the kindest on my body. But I think that the year long prep is so much better than the like 6 weeks before prep. For one, like you're probably not gonna get in shape. For two, you're probably not gonna even do it because you don't have that the routine. Like for me, I'm so routine driven. Like I'm gonna get off with you today. I'm gonna go to the gym today. I go every single day. I try and find time to go to the gym. Not every day, but 5 days a week, something. But that routine is so important for me. And if it's so hard to get into that. If you stop going to the gym for 3 months, like it's really hard to start back up and go to the gym. Try it. Like, the same thing with eating. Like I do meal preps now and like, you don't realize how terrible it is eating Jack in the Box or McDonald's or we live in San Diego, so Mexican food every day. You just, for one, you're addicted to it. You don't realize it. But then once you start eating healthy, you're like, oh, I feel so much better. But it takes time to do that and to get that routine.
absolutely. No, it makes a huge difference for sure. I just was coming back off of a little bit of downtime. And yeah, I was like, man, this is so much harder than if I would have just stayed in this routine. So definitely worth it if you can stay rooted into that discipline.
Off topic, my wife, my best friend's our senior pastor of our church. And we have a mega church, and he's one of the guys, whatever he's doing, everyone's going to do it. So he's running a half marathon. So he decides everybody up, and I'm like, screw you, bro. I'm not doing it. Come on. I'm like, no way. I know my knees. I cannot. Running is not my thing. Like I do a lot of mobility stuff, but if I run on asphalt, like my knees get messed up. So my wife like gets sucked into this thing, and her first day running, Court, I'm not a runner. This is the worst. I don't think my body can handle. I'm so sore. My hips, everything hurts. And now here we are 3 months in, and she just did 12 miles on Saturday. And she's got these like special running glasses. She's got the belt. She's got the whole nine, right? She's running a marathon in 2 weeks and she's just going to crush it. But yeah, they have the special shoes. Like they're all geeks now. They're all runners. But it took that consistency to get there. Like just trying to start up and do it. Like that's a great example for hunting too. Like you just try and throw a pack on and go, or throw some boots on and go. Like it's miserable. How much of your training, I want to hear more mobility, because I love that you said that. Because like for me, like maybe it's because I'm pushing 40 now, like stretching, mobility, my hips, that stuff has been critical to me. Like doing single leg movements has been critical to me being more effective in the. So speak to the mobility part of it. And then there was one other thing. Speak to the mobility first. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think a solid routine that you'll do. Because it's like you talked
Mhm.
about your wife and you guys, like, who's saying that they aren't runners. Like, I think that it's really important to train in ways that you enjoy, like as far as your foundational fitness. But when
Mhm.
it comes to mobility, like everyone needs to be mobile. Everybody needs to keep good quality joint movement and full range of motion. So I think for me, it looks like about 4 days a week of spending 20 to 30 minutes of just working through stretches. And a
Mhm.
lot of things that I do. So I've had my hip done and I've had a shoulder done. And so I go back to those PT things and doing it on both sides just to keep everything moving and healthy. But I think it's just the consistency, not doing it for a month and then not doing it for 6 months. It's not going to help you. It's like you have to stay on the routine of keeping up on it. But I think other things like cross training can be really good. Doing some yoga, implementing some foam rolling stuff, if you can get body work done. I think that those things really help me stay a little bit more functional and ahead of the game. I actually just saw the chiropractor today, and this is like my analogy. It's I typically see somebody that does other kinds of body work instead of chiropractic. Chiropractic to me is like the reactive therapy.
Mhm.
And so instead of trying to go in because I'm hurt, I try to do other things that keep me from getting hurt so that I don't have to go to the chiropractor. Same thing with mobility, just trying to keep joints loose, trying to spend some time getting into those movements so that I don't put myself in a position where the next time I go to draw my bow, my shoulder's locked up or I get hurt. Those things I think are super important to keep.
So you mentioned body work. I think most people aren't going to know what body work is unless they're in that fitness type industry. So are you getting cupping done? Or what are you doing for body work?
Yeah, it can be a lot of different things. Like you mentioned, cupping, or you can do some tuning, breath work. For me, I do body work. She does some lymphatic drainage just with some of the things that I have going on. But body work is essentially things that help your body perform better and tons of different modalities for that. I do red light therapy, sauna. I'd like to say cold soak, but that really only happens in the summer. Let's face it, for me. And so, yeah, just implementing those things into my weekly routine are helping me get back to where I want to be.
My off topic again. My wife has a red light mask, and she wears it in bed, and she looks like Iron Man. So
Oh, I
it's
love
like,
it. That's awesome. I've seen
yeah,
those. They crack me up.
yeah, it looks. So talk about mobility. Now, what about on the job? Like I feel I could squat all the weight in the world, but I put a pack on and my hips hurt, my knees hurt. But if I put a pack on, now do it regularly, hike regularly, there's joints in your feet there's different muscles you don't use until you hike. How much of your hunting training is based on that kind of stuff, like in the field carrying a pack?
Yeah, good question. And that for me changes throughout the year depending on what the season is. So right now we're in shed hunting season and it looks like being super functional, actually having the pack on and the boots on and going out there and doing those things. Throughout the year, like I don't tend to ruck all season, or excuse me, all year. I tend to
Mhm.
add that in those few months leading up to the hunting season, especially on our big game hunts or some of those bigger hunts that we do. But I definitely think that you have to practice how you're going to play. You have to put your body
Mhm.
through those same movements. And it's like even just putting on your pack is more beneficial than not having that experience. Cause yeah, you're using your upper body, you're using your core differently, you're using your back, your stabilizers, your feet, your arches.
Mhm.
So if you're not replicating that, it's going to be a lot harder when you do put the pack on and go on the hunt. But definitely, I always am a big fan of practice how you want to play.
Yeah, I'm very similar to that. Like I don't ruck all year long, but I will probably starting like July, August, like just start doing like we have a hill in front of our house and I'll walk the hill with my wife and the dogs and, she'll be walking. Well, no, she's probably running now. She's a runner now, but I'll wear a 50-pound or 60-pound pack and I'll walk up that hill with my boots on as well. Cause that's important too, is have the boots on. And just to get the big thing for me is like the stabilizers, the knees, the hips, the joints and getting those things broken in. And if I do that for a month or so before season, I'm pretty good to get out there and go. And I've learned to a lot of this stuff where people are just like out there just pounding hills. Like I'm not there anymore and I don't have to be there. I can be successful and not have to pound. Like I can still go as far as anybody. I can get there. I just don't have to be crazy about it. We're hitting that hour mark. I typically like to have one good hunting story before I wrap up. So you want to hit us with a hunting story?
What genre are we going for here?
Or whatever you want. Just give me a funny one or a hard one or whatever you want. Something memorable.
Something memorable. I am going to go with our trip to Hawaii last year. I got to take my best friend over to Hawaii and do an axis deer hunt. And I'm going to spoiler alert right here. We did not kill an axis deer. We didn't even fire any shots at this axis deer, but it was one of the coolest experiences. And it was really cool because Christine got to be there and she's fighting stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And so just the ability to be out doing this experience and doing this hunt with her was really cool. But we put ourselves up. One day we walked up in this area that we were hunting and we found this really nice gulch that was running down and there was sign everywhere and we were getting a little tired. So we thought we'll sit down, we'll just be quiet, we'll hang out for a little bit. She's the number one focus. Like I just want to get her an opportunity. She's not killed something before. I just really want to get her this opportunity. So we're sitting there and we're just being quiet and our wind is good and all of us were sitting there for quite a while. And all of a sudden she's like freaking out and like hitting me. And she's, Courtney, there's an axis deer right behind you. I'm like, how close right behind me? Like we had some communication things to work out. Like we had not hunted before together. And when you're with your partner, the lingo a little bit more. And so anyways, how close? And she's like 8 yards. And so I'm like, get your bow. And she's, I can't get my bow. It's over there. So she couldn't move. And so I had mine in my hand. And so my adrenaline hits. And I wish I could understand why sometimes it does and why sometimes it's a cucumber. It's real. I wish I could own that. And so I get it. And I'm looking at her and I'm laughing. I look at her and I like show her my hand that's wiggling and we're kind of about it. And I get up and I'm able to move because he's moving behind this ohia tree. And I get up and I get to full draw and this thing totally pegs me. And just from like probably 8 yards away, just stares me down. And when he stopped, he was perfectly had this like tree gap where I could see him. But then there was this rock. He was on the other side of this rock mound that perfectly covered up his vitals. And so I locked eyes with him. He locked eyes with me. She's crapping her pants. I'm pretty much crapping my pants. This thing's staring right at us. And he spooks and he turns and he made this it was almost like a bark noise. I had not heard an axis deer make this noise before. And he was gone out of our lives. And then it just was like me saying several bad words in a row and then looking at her and we were laughing and we were crying. And it wasn't a notch tag. It wasn't meat in the freezer, but it was so stinking cool to get to experience this incredible, elusive public land animal with my best friend who's got this new lease on life. Like she might be fighting this cancer, but she's saying yes to all these adventures. So we had several fun and successful hunts this year with notch tags, but I think that one definitely stands out as being a big highlight for me.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that. And my favorite part about hunting is that community that you have with somebody. And I don't think anyone understands, like when you do something like that with somebody, there's a bonding thing there. It's like almost like a carnal bonding. It's like we were meant to have. And to experience that with your friend is just a beautiful thing. And that's awesome. Where can we find you? You're on YouTube, you're on Instagram, you got podcasts. What you got?
Yeah, I can be found on most platforms. Meta hates me, so I'm either there or canceled. Who knows? But on Instagram, YouTube, and our website at Her Outdoor Journey. And
Okay.
then you can also find the podcast on all major podcast apps. And on Carbon TV, it's called the Soul Summit Podcast. And yeah, we have a lot of fun, talk about hunting and the outdoors, just trying to create space and opportunities for women. And yeah, just bridging that gap of education.
And if you want to get your wife to go to one of Courtney's summits, her outdoorjourney.org or .org or .com.
.com.
.com, and you can sign up for some of these events because it's summertime's coming up, and that's when these events are, right? Coming up pretty quick.
Absolutely. Yep. We've got some great things coming up this summer, including Alaska and Utah and Oregon and all the fun things. So definitely check it out.
That's awesome. Thank you, Courtney.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.